Hi everybody, so welcome to the Crystal Interactive Meetings webinar there. Ahoy there, everyone as well, with our Crystal Life Raft theme today for our webinar. Hopefully we'll be throwing you a few life-saving ideas to help you with the use of event technology at your meetings and events. For those of you that are just joining now, I'd just like to introduce once again the real-time polling and messaging tool Me2 that we'll be using today to encourage you to take part in some live polls and to also send in your thoughts and opinions through the messaging function. All you need to do is pop in web.me2.io to your browser and then enter the code 182-663-808. And this will be on every slide that we go through this morning, so if you are joining us late or accidentally log out, the Me2 details will be on each of the slides as we go through. So just to get started today, to introduce myself, your experienced seafarers today are myself, Captain Dom Freeman. I've worked in the sales team here for 12 years now, looking after mostly the intermediary sector, agencies, production companies and venues, helping them with their inquiries and demonstrating our products and event technology to help them with best practice for their meetings and events. Alongside me today is my colleague Rob Curtis.
Thank you, Dom. So my name is Rob Curtis. I am the sales manager here at Crystal Interactive. Similar to Dom, I've been working in the event tech space for 14 years now. So between us, we've nearly got 30 years of working and advising clients on the right technologies for different meetings. So to kick off, you should have all downloaded Me2. We're going to start with a poll. So we want to get an idea of how confident you are at introducing event technology into your events. So if we open the vote now, so 1, not at all confident, 2, quite confident, 3, confident, or 4, very confident. You may have been using event technology quite regularly, and you might have had a great success, and therefore obviously you'd be at the upper end of that scale. But what we're going to do today is we're going to re-ask this question at the end, and hopefully we would have increased confidence in the way that you deploy technology within your meetings and events. So we've got a couple more votes coming in. Okay, if we close the vote there. Okay, real mix there, Dom.
Yeah.
Seems like we got quite a varied online virtual audience here today. So as I said, hopefully throughout the course of the next 15 or 20 minutes or so, we will be able to address this at the end and see if we've shifted you up to give you some hints and tips about how to deploy event technology. The topics that we're going to be discussing today are these 4. Now these have been derived from the most common asked questions that Dom and I, the clients ask Dom and I. And these are, the first topic we're going to talk about is why is no one using my app that I've spent months building? Second topic is how we're going to kickstart the meeting and energize your audiences from the outset. Third topic, how we're going to make speaker presentations and panel sessions more engaging. And finally, the utopia for all event planners, how do we get better evaluation data from our audience and how do we get an understanding of what people think of our events. Now, as you'll have seen using the Me2 app, today is also an opportunity to send in any questions outside of these 4 that you may want to ask us. We'll try and address some of these during the Q&A session at the end. However, everything will be captured and we'll be doing a frequently asked questions follow-up post this webinar. So if there's anything you want to ask us, then please do so and then send it in via the Me2 app. Okay, topic 1. So why is no one using my event app? Well, it's absolutely important that, first of all, you define who your audience is and your environment that your event is taking place in, and just to work out, is actually the event app the right technology for your meeting? And perhaps it's better suited to something else. What we've got here is a little sort of timeline here, and we'll talk about ideas about how you can promote the event app and drive better app adoption. The first point here is don't put yourself under any undue pressure to publicize your app early. A lot of app vendors will sell on the idea of engaging with the audiences before, after, and during the event, and that's absolutely true. However, we don't see a lot of people downloading apps 1 month before the event. They're just not in the mindset of attending the event, and therefore they won't download it. So don't put yourself under any undue pressure to get the app out early. what we suggest really is probably around sort of 1 or 2 weeks before the event, you want to start publicising that the app is available. And the most common themes are, ways to do this is through social feeds, so the external ones such as Twitter and LinkedIn, or if your event is for an internal audience, then perhaps you could promote that the app is available through social intranets, so Yammer or SharePoint, that type of thing. But one of the most common methods is through traditional email communication. Now, what we have the facility of doing is actually looking into the data analytics and working out who's downloaded the app and when. And for those people that haven't, we can actually siphon out those from a list and send them a personalised email to say, come on guys, please download the app, we're only a week away from the event. What you might want to do, looking at the analytics, and again, you can work with your app vendor to access those analytics, or you can access them yourself through many of the content management systems that are out there. But perhaps a few days before the event, you want to have a last push. And we'd suggest that don't aim for 100% adoption rate before the event. It's just not going to happen. At best, you want to work to probably around a 60 or 70% adoption rate. At the event itself, it's worth considering putting some signage around the event to remind people that the app is available, and also having a dedicated app help desk, so people that can come along to the desk and help with logging on Wi-Fi and actually helping to download the app. What we're starting to see actually is a trend where people are deploying apps typically as on the attendee's own device, but you might want to consider having maybe a couple of iPads on the registration desk to give out to those people that can't download it or simply don't want to download it. And so what we're seeing is a lot of clients sort of renting in a small number to have on those registration desks. If you're adamant that you do want to use an app and you don't want to, you don't think they're going to download it in advance, you could actually have the app preloaded on an iPad per person. And obviously there is a cost implication of renting in iPads per person, but you do guarantee that you get 100% adoption rate. Probably one of the most single important things though in terms of getting people to use the app is to have a good introduction at the start of the meeting. So getting your presenter during the housekeeping to get people to download the app, to access it, and to start reiterating some of the main features that are going to be used throughout the course of the event, such as the live polling, that the messaging is available, and perhaps gamification as well. And Don will talk a little bit about that in just a second. It's also worth noting, though, that if you absolutely don't think that an app is the right technology for your meeting, that there are alternatives out there. So this is our Connector advanced voting keypad. It's incredibly popular still. It doesn't need any Wi-Fi, doesn't need any attendees to download anything or connect to anything. They walk into the meeting space and they're laid out in the seats and they pick it up and it's there for instant engagement. So typically attendees can do live polling, messaging, and it's got an integrated delegate microphone as well. So Tom,
yeah,
how do we energize the audience from the outset?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Cheers, Rob. Some great tips there, and I just want to reference some of the messages coming in. Thanks very much for that. And hello, Surrey, Guildford, and London. We hear you. We'll pick up on those questions during the Q&A. But yeah, following on from Rob, thanks for that. Some great ideas coming up now to energize your audience from the outset, and very much following on from Rob said at the end of his first topic there. It's really important to do that housekeeping at the start of your event where you're using event app technology. Wi-Fi, getting people on there, really, really key, and obviously then getting people onto the app as well. I've introduced this technology at events in the past. You don't want the people there shaking their heads and looking a little bit worried. You want to get them on board, nodding their heads, smiling, happy that everyone's there with you. So do that housekeeping, commit a little bit of time to that, don't be afraid to do so. So energizing your audience from the outset. It's a good time to do this right at the beginning of the day because people are a little bit sleepy, perhaps they've had a long journey in, they've had a few too many coffees, any comfort breaks perhaps as well, and lunch. So how do we do that? Well, you could do it perhaps with some physical exercise and ask them to jump out of their chairs and do some star jumps. Maybe not the best idea with health and safety and things these days. So the alternative is if you've got the event technology at your event, to actually do some stimulate minds by using that technology that you have in your hands. Key thing really, try not to make this sort of stuff too heavy at the start of the day. So if it's an energizer, you don't really want people to be trying to come up with an idea to create sort of world peace. That's far too sort of demanding an activity. What you want to do is really sort of ask people in this morning's news, which fruit exhibited a striking resemblance to a particular world leader. It's a bit of fun, it'll get people laughing and hopefully get you some jovial sort of comments in. So consider doing a live poll in that sort of area to get people on board. We very much practice using topical questions when we do our quarterly workshops, and that will generally sort of incorporate perhaps a headline that someone may have read in the paper, on the train on the way in, or seen on the news while they're having their breakfast in the morning. Just the fact there is a headline that may be in the back of someone's mind there, it'll spring them to life, or get them thinking, and bring them into your event. So consider maybe a topical question there as well. And then pushing that along a little bit further, we can start introducing quizzes. So it won't be that the format of your event will incorporate a quiz throughout, perhaps, but maybe just a couple of quiz-style questions at the start of every session, just to bring them on board. People love a quiz, they get very competitive, and it will bring up the atmosphere in your room. And people will feed off of each other because they'll see the live polls that are going on and they'll want to take part in that as well. So we can score that, and we can introduce leaderboards, and people can see how they're doing at the start of the day and after each break when we do those sessions. Those quizzes can be pub quiz related, so a bit of fun, or it could be business related as well. So don't be afraid to maybe during your sales kickoff ask the team what they thought the turnover was in the previous calendar year, and then ask the vote, get some great insight, find out what they know, score it, but then back that up with the hard facts. So at the same time as your audience having a bit of fun with that question, you're actually giving them something that hopefully they'll take away and understand that they've what they did actually do last year if they didn't all realise that already. Moving an event app a little bit further along from a quiz, we can actually gamify your apps as well. So gamification has been a little bit of a buzz thing for the last year or two, and it's certainly not for everybody, but it's worth considering if it's going to marry up with the objectives of your event. If you can make the event app work for you, then consider how you might use that gamification. So it might be a networking style event, for example. So you want to encourage people to connect with each other, so you award them points for doing so. And that can happen right from the start of the day before the event as well, because we're extending the life cycle of your event using an event app. But also, perhaps if you've got an exhibition stand at your event, you can ask people to go around an exhibition stand, talk to a stand owner, using the app, scan a QR code, win some points, and work their way up the leaderboard. So that's gamification of your event app. And finally, but certainly not least, word clouds are ever popular with all the technologies that we supply at events. Think about how it might fit into the format of your event, but ask them a question at the start of the day using the messaging. Please type in one word how you're feeling today, and get some great insight to how people are feeling in the audience that morning. It might be that it's a company merger and people are feeling a little bit nervous, unsure in the morning. Think about re-asking that question at the end of the day to actually picture whether there's been actually any change once you've been through your presentations. Hopefully at the end of it all, once you've woken people up, you'll have some expressions a little bit like we've got in the example here. Energize, happy people, ready to get into the rich content that you're about to take them through on the day. Great stuff. Just before we move on to the next topic, if you've joined late, if you want to take part in the polling and sending us in some messages, please note bottom right hand corner the link to join the Me2 technology. That's web.me2.io. Pop that in your browsers and then pop in the 9-digit code we have there too. So the next topic, how to make speaker presentations and panel sessions a little bit more engaging. So how do we do that? So aside from the event organizer obviously clearly getting their speakers, their moderators, and a good mixture of expertise for the panel in advance, how are we going to make this a little bit more fun by using the event technology? It's certainly not for everybody. There are a number of speakers that might be not confident in using this technology. So early on, you want to really make sure that you engage with those that are confident, have used this technology before, and would be happy to take it on and build their content around it on the day. If some speakers aren't prepared to do that, that's absolutely fine. Try not to waste your time, obviously trying to engage with them and get them to use the technology. How do we make these sessions a little bit more engaging? With an event app, we can do some pre-event surveys, so we can actually poll your audience before they arrive on site to help them select the topics and the content that might actually be discussed during these sessions. So that will get them more engaged right from the off, because that content will be something they've helped sculpt in advance by doing some feedback sessions before the event's even started. Also key, would be to make sure that if you have a moderator at the event, that they're a good, strong moderator. Your speakers don't actually have to take on board this messaging system themselves. The moderator will be there to actually collect any messages as they come through from the technology, and they can be filtered out, moderated, and then brought on to the speaker as they approach their Q&A session. So again, it's taking away that pressure of the speaker worrying about that stuff as we're going along. We can also introduce live polling. We did a poll earlier today. So the typical attention span of an audience can be about 5 or 10 minutes when you're presenting. So as you can see from the example here, the dotted line actually represents the attention span of your audience. So if you're not introducing any live polling during your session, perhaps after the first 10 minutes, if you haven't got your key stuff across as a speaker, you're actually going to lose the audience and your key points might get lost halfway through. But temperature check the audience by throwing in some live polls throughout. You'll hopefully keep them engaged as you go along, and that might just be questions: do they understand what you're talking about? Do they agree? Do they disagree? For example, just to make it a little bit more of an effective presentation and keep people on board. We've done this today, so a good example was to top and tail your presentation with a before and after question. So benchmark knowledge at the start of the presentation, and then re-ask that question at the end. So what we're doing there is just measuring shifts in understanding and opinion, and ultimately this will provide some good return on investment for your event organizer to see whether that content has actually hit the mark and worked well for them. That's the end of my 2 topics, so I'm going to hand across to Rob now. So what do delegates think of my event, Rob?
Always a difficult question, Dom. It is. It's one of those most challenging areas that we know event planners are tasked with in getting client feedback, and sometimes, you know, we know that response rates can be low. So what I'm going to do now is just literally give you a couple of hints and tips about how you can generate more value feedback from your audience. The first thing to think about is you can get live evaluation data through live polling. So the benefits of doing that is it's in the moment while everybody is still in a room and they haven't, you know, and they're fresh at the event. And what we're able to do is actually capture that information through the poll, but not necessarily display the data. So it remains anonymous to the audience, but actually from an event organizer, you can look at it afterwards. And we don't suggest replacing a whole evaluation form through live polls, but there might be some key questions that you want to get information from that are really pertinent to your audience that may be worth asking in the form of a live poll without the data being displayed. The second form is sort of what I class medium-term feedback is through surveys, so traditional surveys. So many people will send out a post-event survey through SurveyMonkey or other forms, but we can append surveys to each agenda item within the app. Now, you could ask the surveys at the end of the day to do a whole evaluation survey at the end of the day, or what we're seeing is a lot of people sending out surveys after each session and sending out push notifications and announcements that the surveys are available. The other thing you can think about is incentivizing the completion of those surveys through, as Dom said, the gamification module, so awarding more points for survey completion. And what we can also do is we can actually award more points for the quicker that they answer those surveys and get more completions that way. In terms of after the event itself, the event app platforms have incredible analytics built into them. So it's worth asking your vendor discussing with your vendor up front about the types of analytics that you might want to look at post the event. Now, they can provide that information to you, or in some instances, they can give you the access to the content management system so you can drill down into the analytics in your own time on your own accord. Things that are commonly looked at are, you know, which presentations are most downloaded, which documents are most downloaded, which speakers are sparking the most interest, or if you're having an exhibition, you can also track footfall at each exhibition stand as well. So there's just a few ideas of how to obtain a bit more feedback through the app technology. So we've got a couple of minutes left now. We've got some really great questions come through from the Me Too app, which I'm going to just address now. We're going to sort of look at 3 questions, I think. But if there are other questions that you want to ask then please, we'll keep the Me Too app open. But I've just included Dom and myself's email address. So if there's anything you want to ask us, please feel free to email us.
So great number of questions in, Rob. Just going to have a quick look through to see who's got the most thumbs up there. There's one here with 6. What features do you recommend to include, not include in a successful event app?
Okay, cool. So what we suggest to clients is not to overcomplicate it. So almost less is more in some instances, and a lot of it depends on the type of event you're running. So for example, if you're running a sort of straight conference with one plenary, then you probably only have quite a limited set of modules, so like the agendas, speaker biographies, polling, messaging, that type of thing. If it's an exhibition, or if it's a conference with an exhibitor area bolted on, then there's obviously all the exhibitor modules. But my suggestion would be, if you've never used an app for the first time, is try and keep it simple, and then build out from there.
Thanks, Rob. Another one in there about the speakers being quite nervous. Obviously, we touched on that in the topic there earlier. Any tips to help them become less nervous? Absolutely. I mean, it is a case of working with them more at the idea development stage to try and work their content around the use of the technology rather than trying to shoehorn it in afterwards. So it's quite important to engage them at the right time. And as I said earlier as well, if they are nervous and it's not something they've used before, it's certainly not best to push it onto them. It might be that you have 6 speakers during your event and only 3 of them are actually going to use the technology. So one of the key things we always do when we got our guys out on site is that we'll rehearse it as much as we can, make them feel comfortable with it, and make sure that it works during their sessions. But yeah, lots of hints and tips we can do and bring through on that. Any others there, Rob?
Yeah, it's a good question here about gamification here. It's got 3 likes. So are people still using gamification elements? I thought it was a buzz that had passed. So my first experience of gamification was a couple of years ago when we ran a client workshop up in London, and it was when the gamification model first came out, and I can honestly say I've never seen such an engaged audience. Our audience just went crazy for it, and they were playing the game at the event we launched it, and they were playing for points 2-3 days after the event. What gamification requires is a little bit of pre-planning in terms of designing the game and the software within the app, and obviously we can help with that, and your other vendors who you use can help with that. But what it also requires is a little bit of operational design in terms of what your attendees are physically doing at the event to get points. Also, it's worth keep pushing that gamification element at the event itself, and maybe having the leaderboard displayed prominently at the event, and also incentivizing people to play. So perhaps awarding a prize for the person to come top of the leaderboard.
Great, thanks, Rob. One more here. Is your event app optimized for web? Absolutely it is. I mean, it's optimized for iOS and Android mobile phones, but very much so there is a web version as well.
Good stuff. Okay, and as I said, we'll keep the Me Too open, and we will. Thank you for sending all your questions and comments in. We will respond to them post the webinar in a follow-up. So thank you for that. Just before we sign off, we asked you this question at the start. We want to see, hopefully, that we've given you a little bit more confidence and a few ideas. So we're going to ask it again. So how confident do you now feel at introducing event technology into your events? So 1, 2, 3, or 4. If you can, ask you to vote on that for me, please. So you can see the responses coming in thick and fast.
That's great.
Brilliant. Thank you. So close the vote there. Moment of truth. And what we can do is actually see here that we've demonstrated an instant return of investment on our webinar today, Dom. So we'll be doing a few more of these by the looks of things, but this is just an example of where very simply and instantly you can demonstrate an instant shift of understanding or feeling in the room by just doing this simple before and after comparison. Just before we sign off, a date for your diary. So if you're interested in learning more about event apps and deploying event technology, we run free to attend workshops throughout the course of the year. We do 4 a year. The next one we've got penciled in is on October the 26th, which is autumn half term. So hopefully when many of you are not on events, it tends to be at accepted venues at Fenchurch Place, and it'll be around implementing event apps before, during, and after. We'll actually be using our event app at the event itself, and you'll be an opportunity to discuss with your peers about successful deployments and obviously learnings for people that maybe haven't had a successful deployment. So more information will be sent out that in the next few weeks. We are also planning on running one up north in Manchester, so if you're based up that way, we're planning on hopefully running one before the end of the year. Just want to say thanks again for joining today. We are very fortunate in that we are quite technology agnostic, so we can advise on the right technology for your meeting. We have a number of different technologies, some of which we've discussed today, but there are others. So if there are any inquiries or any questions that you might have or any projects coming up, obviously we'd love to hear from you. Our details are there on the bottom there, and on our personal mobile numbers. So we're happy to help wherever we can. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a good rest of the day and a lovely weekend.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.